Also wanted to get where is it? Amok ZN13. If they're in here, thank you for the Twitch Prime Gaming subscription yesterday during the offline hours. So yeah, we'll get started. I'm just gonna make a little funky beach ball, some kind of beach ball to float on the ocean to play around with. And then we'll go ahead and make the ocean and set it up and everything like that. Oof, that was a bad selection. Let's go to the top. Get in here. All right. So we'll get that as a group. Would be the poles, like North and South Pole, or the caps. Zainab 19977. Thank you for getting in here. It's good you found me on YouTube and made the jump over to Twitch. The Vex Week 1 video. I learned a lot. Well, you have 8 more knowledge packed dry Vex explorations to get into. All right, so I'm just doing some lazy selections. I don't know if this is the best way to do it. I'm trying to make some stripes for the beach ball. Just go ahead and do it like this quickly. You can go up here, and if you go to like lasso picking, then you can draw like freehand selection sets and stuff like that. It's pretty interesting. What do you think? All right, so we have that. Just finish this up. Boom. I missed something. Then you just hold down Shift. If you don't know about that trick or whatever, to do multiple selections or just to add to your current selection. So I'm just doing these groups, and looks like we need a few more, and then we can make the ocean. All right. Oof. Oh man, I went too far. Ah. All right. Get that. And this one, and one more after this. Sorry about this tedious business. I think that there's some better ways with expressions. You could do like group by range and stuff like that, but it's not too bad. The group. Sometimes with the sphere, it's like a weird, because the first thing I wanted to get was the caps, the top and the bottom or whatever, but yeah, you can do group by range. Sometimes you need to do some weird offsets, depending on the topology and stuff, but it can be really nice for doing this kind of stuff. So if you do like 1 of 6, something like that. Oof. You get some interesting designs and stuff like that. But sometimes you can mash your way through it if you do like this. You can combine multiple ones and mask things out and stuff like that. But yeah, it's cool to try out different things. All right. So we'll do our quick little coloring. Let's just get, what do you think? Beach ball. This stuff looks, ooh, this is like a big one. The hell is going on here? The jumbo. All right. So it looks like he's doing white on the top and bottom. The 3090 compared to a 1080 Ti is just magic. Did you do a benchmark with the vultures? This is you could float all the way to Hawaii on this thing. 2 minutes instead of 15. I have a feeling I need the render settings I was doing back then were pretty bad. You know, like the optimizations were not ideal. I was just brute forcing everything kind of in the pick like global ray samples or whatever. Nelson, yeah, thank you. Thank you for the subscription. All right, let's just do like this. Maybe we'll do some yellow. And, oh, let's do some blue. Let's get the green in here. This is going to be a little bit of a funky color scheme. And we'll just do, let's do an orange. Something like this. Maybe we'll do this with group 7. We have the white. All right, that's good enough. So we're going to be going into the ocean now. Let's just type that in and see what happens. So yeah, tons of different looks and stuff like that depending on the waves, the lighting conditions, time of day, everything like that. Foam, different weather and stuff like that. We'll just go ahead with the get started with the shelf tool and then look at how to use that with Redshift, and then we'll go from there. So this is our beach ball. Save this. Get a new day. What is this? 20th. Oh, let's get my order mixed up. All right. So I'll just call this RS for Redshift. Ocean, version 1. Ends before that. Got 20 months in this year. Okay, so add the shelf tools. You get to whitewater. We'll see that they do have some newer foam workflow that we can test out, but there's lots of different stuff to play around with. So if you just go to the Oceans tab, I have my shelves just as text. If you just go over like this, should look relatively the same now. We do oceans, large ocean, small ocean. Think large. Let's just give it a try. And then I think it's going. So it takes a little bit of time to set up. And this is setting everything up for mantra rendering or karma as well, possibly. So they bake out this spectra as a BGO file, and then the foam as well as a BGO file. So we can't use BGO files in Redshift. But what we can do is use this, we can kind of hijack this export to texture area. Depends on how little we interrupt. So, and then you can see again with the flags here, they're rendering this grid, but the display flag or the viewport is looking at this node here. So there's also a bit of weird stuff that they're doing with these, this point cloud here. a weird kind of expression. So these are like wave instance points to decide where big or small waves will appear on this grid. It's kind of hard to see everything with the default settings that they have. What I'm going to do is just disconnect this one, move this over, and change the wire to that. And let's get rid of some stuff. Get rid of that, get rid of that. What do you think? Maybe let's get rid of that as well. It's a little misleading. So what I do over here, instead of setting that up with wave instancing and everything, I'm going to get rid of the noise mask, and then without any inputs here, this is just generating your ocean settings. If we look, these grids here are super big. They're making this really big so you can theoretically render things to the horizon. Like usually this ocean, if we look here, the grid size is 200. So that means the individual tile or the individual size of the ocean will be 200 by 200. So if I just unlink these channels, now you can see we have more resolution, so you can preview the ocean a little bit more detailed. But we'll still render. Let me just put a null node here. We'll still render this big grid so that if we look at it, we can get kind of like a horizon or whatever. So we're just using this down here to examine settings. And you can even play it and you'll see some animation of waves and stuff like that. You could see some faceting or like cusping or whatever. It's like grid artifacts. So the reason that happens, if we look at our grid, we're doing 512 by 512. But if I middle mouse button here, you can see this is also just 512 by 512. Sometimes if you do a higher resolution exponent, it will do a better job, or it will produce a higher resolution ocean spectrum. So if we do this, then you can see that those grids are less apparent, or they're a little bit like smoothed out or interpolated. And you can go up even higher with this, kind of adds more detail. So the idea with this resolution exponent, it's kind of a weird way that it gets talked about or referred to as, but basically this is the exponent of 2 to whatever that number is. So if you do power of 2 to 12, you get 4096. So this is kind of like a mathematical way of saying 4K texture. If you middle mouse button on here, you can see the resolution of the actual volumes. These are one-dimensional volumes, so it's kind of the same idea as an image, with just a width and a height and a single kind of slice of a volume, or if that makes sense. But this is where the resolution exponent comes into play. So if you want to do 8K, just go up to 13. You're up to 8K. If you have a lot of RAM, you might be able to do the 14 over here. This is like a 16K texture. You might start to run into issues with your renderer, with Redshift, rendering super big textures, but if you really need the detail or whatever, it is possible to do that. So that's the idea with this resolution exponent. And then the other settings down here are for like kind of weather conditions. If you're not familiar with the ocean spectrum workflow or whatever, there's some pretty good videos about it. But it's a really nice node kind of pretty intuitive in terms of parameter naming and stuff like that. So you can pretty quickly whip up like pretty realistic looking oceans and stuff like that. Chop is a pretty good one that's like can give you sharper crests of the oceans. So with that at 0, you get a kind of boring, almost just looks like calmer ocean or whatever. The more you increase chop, the more you get like the pinching of the waves. If you go too high, you can see what was happening there. You can be pushing stuff through itself. It's like if you're cusping too much or whatever. So it's just gotta watch out for that or whatever. But this should be a good starter ocean. This direction is just like 0 to 360 degrees, kind of like a compass, north, south, east, west, or whatever. Try to do a rolling wave sim. Those are pretty cool to do. One of my friends here did one that was, we had interned together at Side Effects. He did a really cool one. The slow-mo. So yeah, this was like 7 years ago, but I'm sure you can do some really powerful ones, really detailed volumes and stuff like that, with some of the new solvers and everything. They do really cool things where you can see even like mist, underwater bubbles, and all that stuff, and it looks really cool. Here's this. You guys want to check this out? All right. So yeah, this is not simulation based. This is 100% procedural, like a texture kind of, or like a noise. It's 100% synthetic. There's ways to apply simulations and stuff to it if we go through more of the shelf tools. But just for rendering and stuff like that, we're going to use just the procedural today. How do you constrain an object to the ocean surface? It looks like it's floating. We'll get to it. we spent a bunch of time at the start making a corny looking beach ball, and we'll be putting some beach balls into it. I don't know if I don't think he'll mind. You feel free to go ahead. I think he's away. He's like out of town this weekend, so it might take him a couple days to get back to you. I think he's kind of off the grid in the wilderness, but yeah, feel free to go for it. So yeah, that's pretty much all the parameters. The other things are these directional bias and movements. Basically, a lower value, you have this omnidirectional waves. Like, they don't really appear to be traveling in a single direction. So this is more of just like wind, like how strong the wind is or whatever. Depending on ocean conditions, you might have more visible like directionality to where the waves are going. I think all that stuff is good. We'll just leave it how it is. And then if we look at this ocean preview, we can actually double click. Looks scary. Don't be too scared. We just go down to the bottom. You can see they have a COP network to bake displacements, bake textures to disk. So this gen displacement, this is the important one that we can grab and actually use this data in Redshift without even having to save it to disk. So it's a pretty nice workflow for working interactively or whatever. You don't have to manage as much files. You don't have to click as many buttons or whatever. So we'll just remember this gen displace node name. And the override size, if you remember, we cranked ourselves up to 4K. You can see here this is only, the size is getting overridden to 1K. So the reason that that happens, if you go up here, there's a downsample parameter. So if you just go to 0, that will do no downsampling. This is kind of like a division. So a downsample of 1 is like 50% of the resolution. Downsample of 2 is 25%, and so on. So I'm just going to go to 0 because we want to bake out, or we want to use the full 4K image resolution. All right. So we should be good. If we go into matte, this is where the mantra shaders or the side effects shaders get built. I'm just going to delete them, just so we have a pretty clean scene. They also make this ocean interior. It's meant to be like a volume or mesh that stores the interior of the ocean. So they're actually doing an extrusion like that to give it thickness. I'm just going to go ahead and delete that to get rid of it as well. And turn off the beach ball for right now, and we'll just make a material network. Does that bake to rat? They have some baking options if you look at this node. Pick is the default, but you can type in EXR if you'd like. You can even do like JPEG or PNG or whatever. For displacements, it's probably a better idea to do EXR. You might have numbers that go above 1, or you might have negative numbers or stuff like that. We're actually not even going to be baking to disk though. We'll be letting Redshift take care of that damage jack. So we're not going to even use this tab really. We're just going to reference the cop nodes. So we can do that inside of a Redshift material builder. This will be our ocean with displacements. Wondering how to do this with Redshift. Yeah, it should be pretty fun. Hopefully it works out. No, I think it will be good. So Redshift will actually let you reference cop nodes if you just use this op : syntax. So you do this and then the path to the cop node, and it will kind of import or just use this texture on the fly without you having to manage it yourself. So I'm going to do this backtick and then do op full path, and that will convert my relative path to a absolute path. So we'll go into the ocean surface, and then we'll go into the ocean preview, the cop or the bake maps network, cop network. And then if you remember, we were interested in this gen displace. And I think that's all we need to do. So if you middle mouse click on this, you can see it returns the absolute path, but we're giving it a relative reference. That just comes in handy if you're packaging this up into a subnetwork or something like that. Bringing it into other scenes is a little bit easier to kind of transport this stuff around without having to worry about managing absolute paths or whatever. So if you ever make Houdini digital assets or stuff like that, you probably know that the absolute paths are a big pain to deal with. Couldn't you just use the ocean sample layer and pipe the spectrum in there and use the displacement from there. So the way that they keep track of the spectrum stuff is using volumes. These don't necessarily give you the actual displacement or the actual ocean. Inside of here, there's actually some stuff that they do to generate the spectrum or to generate the displacement from the spectrum. This uses the FFT or the fast Fourier transform, a bunch of other stuff. So it's a little bit. So the Redshift wouldn't be able to access the volumes. It doesn't know what to do with. It only expects image textures. Like you can render volumes with Redshift, but it's not smart enough to be able to like use a Houdini volume as a texture. So we'll just assign the new shader that we're making here, and we'll just do like a sanity check. Again, I'll just do the relative reference. We'll go into the shader and just connect it like this. So we'll look at what the color or what the values are in the expression. Nothing. Something happened. Read the displacement output. So if you wanted to, you could actually render this like grid with the textures baked into it. But as you start trying to render like bigger oceans that are extending and stuff like that, you could run into some issues. Maybe you could find a way to do it. You let me know if I'm doing something silly. Shades of Orange, thank you for the 7 months. Poggers, we got another veteran anniversary here. The other, okay. So the reason that this happens is that the grid we're rendering, it doesn't have any UV coordinates. So it doesn't know how to assign this texture. So we can just do UV project. Poggers without having TTV enabled. I need to do the, what is it, the TTS, the text to speech for, but then when you guys subscribe, you can type in robotic messages. All right. So I'm just going to hold T and click down here, and then we'll be rendering after the UV gets assigned. And then by default, when I initialize this, it's going to the full scale. You probably want this to be synced up with the ocean spectrum, so like 200. So if we just do 200 by 200, you can do a quick shade to visualize what's happening. So by default with this initialization, I'm really zoomed in to my UV map. If we just go back to 200, 200, then we're actually visualizing a smaller range of it. You can start to see some information. Andre Flat, thank you for the tier 1 sub, gifting a sub to Streamlabs. I'm sure Streamlabs is highly appreciative of the gift sub. You were gifting some more as well. Gifting the rewards. Thank you. Ugly Kid Johnny, I'm making an ocean with Redshift. I'm just setting up some of the maps and some of the technical stuff right now, but we should get a visual result pretty soon. If I'll do a scene share in a little bit. Woody Baum, thank you for the 3 months. What the hell is going on? You guys conspired to gang up on me like this? So we're just visualizing what's going on. One of the things I like to do, I think Redshift is smart enough to know already, but you could do this to explicitly say we don't want this in sRGB color space. It's displacement measurements, so we don't want to do any like color space conversions. And we should be good. So we can go back to our material. We can do a displacement. And just pop it in like that. And instead of height field, this is actually a vector. It's like a 3D direction. Each color is the axis for Z, X, or Y. And then you do have some negative numbers and stuff like that. So this allows you to displace like in 3 directions or whatever, instead of just up and down. And should be good for right now with that. Then we just need to activate the displacement settings with Redshift. So it looks like we're getting something. Let me just go in here, and usually you don't really have diffuse or too much diffuse. With an ocean, I'm also just going to do dome HDRI. I don't think that there's any default ones that Redshift comes with. I have this Ultimate Skies pack that I'm going to go ahead and use. Just get something blue and cloudy. Maybe that should be okay. This will just help you get a little bit better reflections and stuff like that. So if we go into our camera, what's your opinion on Redshift versus Arnold in production use? It just depends, I think, on your workflow and stuff like that. Arnold definitely seems a little bit, I don't know what the word is, maybe more stable or a little bit higher quality maybe for like, it gets used a lot more for film and like feature film and stuff. Whereas Redshift, it seems like is used more for advertising, kind of commercial work and quicker results and stuff like that. So a lot of it just depends on like the size of the team, the resources and the budgets and that kind of stuff. But they're both pretty good renderers. All right, so I'm just gonna zoom out. We can see how much of the ocean we can see. You can see that you do start to have some tiling artifacts if you visualize the ocean spectrum like too zoomed out. So that can be one issue. You can stack or like combine or blend multiple displacement maps together. That can be a way to get around it, especially if you rotate another on like 30 degrees or something like that, scale it up like 20% or 2 times as big or something. Then you can start to hide some of this repetition. Don't zoom out. Just tell them no helicopter shots for this one. Greyhound, how's it going? Yeah, CPU-based farms are pretty good. Arnold's gotten pretty fast. And then it also seems like another aspect of it is like how easy it is to find lighters. It generally seems like Arnold is pretty widely used, so it's pretty easy for them to find Arnold lighting artists and use it. Another thing is this, yeah, I think it's almost like, I see V-Ray used a little bit in advertising and stuff like that, but in terms of film pipelines, it seems like Arnold has pretty much replaced V-Ray. So one thing that's happening with this circle is because we're rendering our grid as a subdivision. If you uncheck that, we don't want to do any smoothing or subdivision to the grid. We want to keep it as a square. So we can turn off smooth subdivision. Hello from Berlin. How's it going? Is it already nighttime there? Let's just zoom in even more. Almost midnight. Me just go into here. I'm gonna make a longer lens for a second. We'll do another render. So I think that there's a couple things that are happening here. You can see that this area is starting to get pretty flat or completely black. You guys are in slightly different time zones, hour apart. This maximum displacement of 1, usually it's pretty good for the scale we've been working at when I do my other projects and stuff. But for these oceans, they're so big, generally you might want to do like 5 or something like that. You'd even go up to 15. You'd see when I went from 1 to 5, there was a difference. This will just make sure that you're not limiting or clamping your displacement amount. Especially if you go into the ocean spectrum, if you do more like higher amplitudes of the scale or stuff like that. I might need to reboot this just to get the new map. As you increase this scale, you'll hit your displacement limit in that area as well. So we did a pretty big displacement there. Just gonna go down to 4 or something like that. We'll go back, render another one. Sometimes I'm making these HDRIs a little bit more intense or exposed. Just do double the intensity. All right. So we're not getting the full detail, I think, from the displacement map. One of the things we can do down here is change our subdivisions. A good way to double check this is if you just do the wireframe node, plug it in to surface. We're still displacing the geometry, but with the wireframe, we can visualize the tessellation. So it looks like a lot of that detail that we were seeing was actually just from the automatic bump mapping, but not actually subdivided or tessellated geo. So if we go up to maybe 10, you can see we get a little bit more detail. I usually turn on this limit out of frustum tessellation. So this will just make sure that areas outside of the camera view, the camera frustum, don't get subdivided too high. we could say 4, and then the stuff in the camera, we can start to add more subdivisions. You can see it's pretty fast for all of this geometry it's creating. We can go back to our shader. Now we're starting to get some nice detail. So even in the reflections and stuff like that, it's looking a lot better. So again, we can see if we set this back to 1 for maximum displacement, we are getting like some clamping in some areas. So if I just do a screenshot, go back up to 15. Lee Prince Gabzer, how's it going? So just visualizing the two, you can see certain areas we're getting clamped. If I turn off this automatic bump mapping, then you can really see the clamping that's happening. Beautiful ocean. Thank you. It's just the shelf. It's just the tools, just the deformer. But yeah, it's pretty detailed. So yeah, we're getting the full displacement now. If you guys want to check this out, or you think you missed a step or anything like that, you guys can get up to date with that file. You might not have this HDRI. If you search online, you can find some good ones. Is it like no emotion HDRI? These ones are free, I believe. Evening, day. You could probably just cut these to a hemisphere and not worry about the farm, all the corn that's growing or whatever. These are pretty good skies that are pretty detailed and stuff like that. HDRI Haven. Yeah, there's some good, definitely some other good resources as well. Yeah, I think I've used some textures and stuff from here before. There's also the C00 textures or whatever. I think they have some HDRIs aside from just the materials. Maybe not. But yeah, that's a good one. HDRI Haven, some of the other ones. No emotion. So there's definitely some quality ones that you can grab for free. So we could go up even higher, maybe. Just get rid of some of these. Make a screenshot here. We would maybe even go up to like 17. Whoop, 17. Take a look. If you start pushing it too much, Redshift will take maybe a minute or longer to build the scene or generate the mesh to ray trace against. But you can see we're getting pretty good results. So as I'm adding the extra subdivision maximum, you can see we're still getting some more detail. Another thing you might want to start doing is decreasing this minimum edge length. I believe that this is like when it will stop subdividing or tessellating the geometry once the edges get shorter than this. So if you keep decreasing this, you'll get more detail. And at a certain point, you'll be limited by your texture map. But we're baking out 4K. We could try 8K. Just do another snapshot. And just go up to 13 here. Like that. It takes a little bit of time to actually generate the ocean spectrum and all that stuff. 8K is a pretty big amount of like geometry or noise kind of pattern to synthesize. It looks like it finished it. Is more detail always better? It's up to you. It depends. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's nice to see like crisp reflections. I find that you really only need this if you're doing a rougher like segment of the ocean until you run out of RAM or GPU RAM. If you're doing like something closer to the beach, or you want to see stuff that's underneath the ocean like pretty cleanly, sometimes you want less less roughness or less like detail. So it just depends on the look that you're after. I'm kind of just messing around and like pushing this as far as I can to see what happens, but it's not always better. Just for visual or artistic results, you don't always need a ton of detail. It looks like this has really slammed me. If you have a huge a huge render farm. All right. So this is the difference here, going from 4K to 8K. You can see we definitely got some more detail in there. It also just depends on like the distance your camera is to the mesh, what format you're actually working at. I'm rendering a 2K image, or like 1920 by 1920. If you're like more zoomed out or whatever, you probably don't need as much detail. I'm just going to go back down to 12 for right now. It was taking like a minute or something to generate that render, so it's starting to get a little slow for Redshift. So we'll just go back to 4K and probably can render this stuff at like 15 seconds a frame or something. A little bit better. All right. Let's just save where we are. I might do another camera angle here. In the sense that sometimes too much detail reveals some other visual flaws in 3D that you wouldn't see. With oceans, I think with this ocean spectrum and stuff like that, you can pretty much get as much detail as you can, and like if you're trying to generate a middle of the ocean, like high seas or whatever render, this produces really natural, like fractal, repeatable waves or whatever. With other aspects like flip and stuff like that, just cranking the detail doesn't always give you better results. But with this ocean spectrum stuff, it's something that a lot of researchers like developed pretty intensely, and it gives you overall pretty good results, even if you're cranking details. So what I was doing here was just looking for the, trying to find like where the sunlight is coming from. Might just be overhead a little bit more. But yeah, we can try a something going further to the horizon or whatever. See how much we break things. Most DOPs aren't resolution independent. Yes, with simulations and stuff like that, you're a little bit stuck with like the resolution you're working at. But this, because it's more of like a noise-based solution, you can always increase or decrease detail without the base look will always be the same. It will just keep adding detail without really changing the motion or anything like that, which is pretty nice. I might need to change the subdivision maximum or stuff, just because we changed the camera's like view, so there's more geometry in the frustum. We'll give it a little bit of time to see if it can handle it. All right, I'm gonna see if it can be canceled. We might be stuck. Oof, it's not a good sign. All right. We'll get back to it. It's a good thing we saved. Okay. The Redshift displacement settings are definitely, I go to sleep, all I see is the Redshift, I don't think that clear frame buffer helps. I think this is just basically very difficult to halt Redshift or to bail once it starts doing that build ray tracing hierarchy step or whatever. What I would recommend doing is just going to a little bit more like conservative settings. The kind of mistake or the problem I did was I moved the way that the camera was looking. So I was limiting less, like I was basically rendering more geometry because there's more of the grid in view. So I think it's a better idea to like walk this stuff way back, do a test render, see how long it's taking, and then slowly increase yourself, if that makes sense. I had just started way too crazy settings. So and then I think our camera is just like too close to the ocean here. All right, so we have some grid artifacts, but can try to work around it. Might want to turn on that. Might get some more detail out of it. All right, so we'll try 14. So we're starting to get some better results. It's possible just getting a different camera. I'm in a little bit of a weird lens right now for this kind of shot. I think you would generally want like a bit of a wider angle, a slightly wider angle. maybe something like that. All right, this is looking a little bit better. Sometimes these repetitions, you maybe do like depth of field, or as well if you just try rotating like your view a little bit. Sometimes you can get away with that. Overall too, if you just decrease the amplitude of your displacements, you can get away with a little bit. It's more forgiving. I think sometimes the best, if you get more aligned with the axis, like if you go pure diagonal, you'll see more of those artifacts. But here I'm more aligned with like the view. We should get a little bit better results. So it's a little harder to see some of those. Like I was saying earlier, you can also mix and match multiple displacement textures and blend them in interesting ways and stuff to hide some of that issues or artifacts. Texture bombing shader. If they have the OSL support with Redshift, it could work with the texture bombing. The easiest way to do it that I know of is like you have this one and then you make another ocean spectra, just link this to the second one, and then if you do like a RS noise, Maxon noise, either of the two, and blend the displacement maps through the noise or using the noise, that can get you pretty close. And then the second one, or the ones that you are blending, you might want to make them like rotate at 45 degrees or 33 degrees or some kind of unexpected number, and then make it like 2.25 times as big or some weird, not exactly twice as big, but a little bit more than twice as big, so that you don't like get, your seams don't line up. Like you want to make it as unnatural as possible to look like organic or whatever. Thought there was something built in for that. There is, so the OSL stuff isn't released with Redshift yet, but I think it should be soon with them. There is some built-in, this stuff here with the wave instancing. This lets you use a point cloud to kind of texture bomb waves, but the actual texture that it generates is still going to be like an image map that's going to be repeated when you're rendering it, if that makes sense. So you'll still see some of the tiling. I don't know how well this will work. I think I did too many of them. Might just be a little bit slow or something. It's going to be weird to set up, but this is just basically still going to generate a tileable set of points, if that makes sense. You can feel free to try it out and see what happens, but just from working with this stuff before, I think the best way to handle these kinds of shots is just making a couple displacement maps that are stacked or blended together or whatever. Vegan Nuts, thank you for the 6 months. Tier 1. Let's go. Alright. So let's just go back to this one. It looks like there is some of that issue that I was talking about earlier with the cusp, the chop being a little bit too powerful maybe. Looks like that got a little bit better. Yeah, it's good to see you back. Been seeing a few of the regulars dip out. I'm sure that everyone's busy with holiday stuff or winter business, busy with projects. Big wave, medium wave, small wave, and blend them. Yeah, that's a pretty tried and true kind of production technique or whatever. This ocean stuff has been around for a while. If you read different articles and stuff, you find a lot of interesting breakdowns and stuff that people did. But for this Life of Pi winter business, this Life of Pi, they used not this exact same tool, but it was still within Houdini, and it was something slightly different, just called the Houdini Ocean Toolkit. But they did similar things to get around, like you can see there is a little bit of repetition, but another thing you can do is like scale down the amplitude over the distance so that it just gets flatter more quickly. But yeah, if you do some research, you can see other areas and other things that people did. But they were basically shooting a lot of practical stuff in this swimming pool or whatever, and then using the ocean tools to extend and blend this stuff out or whatever. But you could find other articles and stuff that are helpful. All right. So we have the beach ball. We didn't do anything with it yet. Let's get it set up. If you guys have used the colors with Redshift before, you probably know that we need to move these color attribute to be either point or vertex. I was assigning it to primitives to get these hard edges, and you can see if we promote it to point, we get interpolation or blending because these points are shared. If you promote it to vertices, then you can get around that issue. So it's basically creating multiple vertices to store the two independent colors without blending them. All right, we have the ball. Could go back into the camera. These kinds of camera angles or whatever generally hold up a little bit better. It's like more aerial view or whatever. So just do that. Then we need a beach ball shader. Still thinking about it a little bit. All right. So we have it. We don't have a beach ball shader yet. Whoops. Need the actual material builder. Oof. 0 for 2. Let's see if we can get it this time. There it is. So you can get the color attribute and just use it for diffuse. For saying this is plastic, we go, I don't know, just try something like that. I'm gonna go down on the subdivisions and down on the resolution just to move a little bit quicker. So we're just getting a little more responsive settings. Put our beach ball shader on. Something went wrong. Let's take a look. I don't know. Just needed to be reset or something, it looks like. So I don't know how shiny, how much time we would spend on it. Maybe something like that looks close enough. Ocean fun times. We're just getting the toys out. So you have the beach ball. Now if we want to get this stuff floating on the ocean, we can go ahead and do that. If we actually use this ocean preview, we can go ahead and use that to decide where to put these balls, or the ball. So just do an object merge. We'll grab that ocean preview, bring it into this object. And before this gets deformed, one thing we can do is store the rest position. So this is the original grid's position. So we can use that here if we do attribute swap. Source attribute is position. We want to swap it with rest. So we're back at our undeformed or undistorted position. And if we take the ball here, you can just do a pack. So this converts it into a single point, a single geometry. So the reason to do that is that you can ray this point to the ocean. So I'm packing it just to treat it like a single point, so that you guys are familiar with working this way. It can be useful if you want to do like a rigid transformation. Basically, you only have the centroid point, just one point at the middle. Without that, we would have a ton of points all around the geometry. So if we just ray the ball when it's packed, it doesn't get deformed or distorted or anything like that. But if we don't do that and we just do minimum distance, you can see it gets flattened. This will preserve the volume, or treat it kind of like a rigid object that doesn't get deformed. So we're doing minimum distance just to find the closest position on the grid. And what we can do is import the attributes from the hit position. So point attributes, it already has the asterisks, so it's getting everything, even rest. So if we go down here and do another swap, then we should be sticking or kind of bobbing the ball with the ocean. So I'm just trying to play it It's going a little bit slowly. Let's just go to 9. So we're working at like 512. 512 by 512. But now if I play it, you can see that the ball is somewhat remembering where to go on the ocean, if that makes sense. So if you're rendering it, you could either render this as a packed geometry, or at the end step, you could do an unpack. So we're basically just kind of encapsulating it like a single point, single object, like putting it in a container to do our operation, and then unpacking it or like dereferencing it after, if that makes sense. So you have some nice options working this way. The ray node, yeah, it's very useful. So you could do a scatter. This is a pretty cool way to do it as well. So if we scatter a bunch of points onto this ocean surface, this will inherit the rest. And then if you want to, you can just do copy to points. So these are the points. This is the geometry. And now we have a ton. Again, if we just do our swap, we'll get to the deformed positions for all of our beach party. If you do this normal node, it's kind of hard to see, but these are now aligning with the direction that the surface is pointing in. So you do get some differentiation in like the rolling or whatever. Then if you do like a randomize and set an up direction, just move this over here to direction, then we can get some slightly more stable or interesting looking kind of arrangements. The toy. So yeah, we also have the rubber toy. We can do a similar thing here. Looks like we need to pre-rotate him -90. I think that's looking right. You could do this like, oof. Okay, I think I see what's happening. So if you want to offset it, there's a few different options that you have. The easiest thing might just be doing like a peak right here. Yeah, I think it's getting closer to following the normals. Let me try to figure this step out. Something. I think I see what's happening. There's a few different ways to fix this. I don't know if this is considered cheating. You can just do something like that. So it's using the normals, like which way is up, but because we've specified this, they're getting spun or rotated around randomly. You can do this with a little bit bigger of a guy. And move him up even more. Starting to get the idea. So there's some more advanced stuff you can do if you really want these to be interacting with the water and stuff more. But if you're just looking for a quick, somewhat procedural solution, this kind of stuff is a pretty good workflow. So I'm going to go back to the ball and could leave it like that. I think we can switch this if we do want this many of them. We just go under here with Redshift, instancing, instance, SOP level, packed primitives. Let's see. It works. So it's still pretty quick. So we got to the lower resolution because we just wanted to see the animation and everything like that. If we're going to get back to the, just going to move these down a little bit. All right, maybe that's nicer. So yeah, if we want to get back to the higher quality surface, we can go up to 11. That should be 2K. You start to get a little bit cleaner looking results. So people were asking about the detail. Is more detail always better or whatever earlier in the stream. One thing detail does help is build a sense of scale. So when I was working at like 512 by 512, it might have looked like this was a swimming pool or something like that. But as you add more detail, then it looks like you're actually now in maybe the middle of the ocean, or it starts to give you more of a grand sense of scale or whatever. Kind of like if you see less detail, you're going to think that you're like zoomed in more or whatever. And then I think I'm just going to get rid of this stuff. I don't know if it's might be slowing stuff down a little bit. Or you can try doing refractions and seeing what happens. It might, yeah, it looks like it's messing up a little bit because we don't have any stuff behind it. I don't know if there's a great way to handle this with Redshift. You could see that they were doing the extrude volume, the side effects method. You might be able to do, I don't know how well this will work. It's a lot of balloons. It's like the guy from Up, his house fell down and all of his floating stuff fell into the ocean. There might be some stuff you can do with the absorption to kind of build like a water is hard to render. You could do that. What this should do is this should build like tinting the render to be as as the distance that the light travels behind the grid, it should get more dark or like opaque almost or whatever. This is like meant for tinted glass or whatever, but I'm kind of breaking it a little bit. So I don't know, it gets you like a little close to it. Might want to switch this to something closer to the water index of refraction. But yeah, I think maybe as a hack that this extinction one, or there's some other ones you can try. These can get you pretty close. So you can see the difference here with and without it. It's doing some distortion and stuff like that. You can also use this to build a little bit of like a vibe. There's more of a fantasy. These ones are maybe like island, tropical. Or I guess this makes sense if we're in beach balls. This is more of like a Miami Vice style ocean. It's the Miami Vice ocean shader. The business here with this beach ball is a little bit funky. I might do some color corrections and stuff to this. So just doing a blurrier reflection. Might just be a little too bright. I think that's feels a little bit closer to the zone. I don't know. Maybe something like that's a little bit better. But yeah, it should be pretty quick. Everything's kind of 100% procedural right now. So just going to a new frame, Redshift will bake. Thought oceans were bright red. You can make some Lord of the Rings funky lava, radioactive, demonic sea. So yeah, I think this shader's looking a little bit more like a beach ball or something close to it. I'm just gonna go in and switch the orange, I'm trying to get the orange part further away from the red. So let's take orange, that's group 7. We'll switch it with the blue, group 4. Take this, group 7, group 4. So a little bit better maybe. I don't know. Yeah, I'll just leave it where it was. kind of a weird beach ball. Yeah, let's see what happens with like a quick animation. I'm just gonna hack something together with a null like this. So if we do negative frame, divided by 12. Let's go back down to low resolution. I'm just trying to get the camera like it's kind of tracking across the surface. We'll move it over in X as well. So the camera's moving diagonal or whatever like that. I'll do another save. You guys can get up to date as well. That was just the node that came with the shelf tool. It was something to render out the ocean spectrum volumes. I'm just going to go in here with Redshift Settings and quickly do something. You can usually leave the rest of the stuff at default. The reflection is kind of like a mirror reflection or whatever, so you don't really need to sample it too much. That stuff should be good. Let's just go ahead and go up some more subdivisions. And we'll go up here to 12, 4K. That should be good. One thing to look here if you want, I thought it was there, maybe they moved it. If you go to System, here it is. Extract, cop, and HDA embedded textures to a custom path. This is actually, if you wanted to dump the temporary files that it's generating from the cop networks, you can do that using this. By default, it will kind of save them or put them into a temporary directory. So that if you're rendering on like a render farm or something like that, you need to manage the stuff a little bit easier. You covered doing RBD sim, the exploded chunks become some sort of soft body. I haven't done that. It could be a cool topic to do. What kind of material are you thinking that it would be? It's like a flesh. So I'll just do a quick set of renders here and see what happens. I guess with the, I could have maybe changed the settings to sample the noise, this reflection noise a little bit better. So yeah, it looks like it's taking 30 seconds a frame maybe, including all the steps. We're baking the displacement, building the ray tracing hierarchy, the longer step, and rendering the image. So each one's, it looks like maybe 23 seconds, but including the pre-render steps or whatever, it looks like it's probably about 30 seconds per frame. It's pretty cool. Pretty quick. No, yeah, I don't think it's double. You might have had a disconnection. Is there a way to quickly asset track a lot of file import nodes? It depends how robust you want your asset tracking to be. The built-in way is somewhat reasonable, and then if you need more options and stuff like that, you might need like your own kind of pipeline or tools or whatever. -2 robust. This isn't super easy to. Let's just get some stuff that would have textures. We'll do the light dome. Change drives from D to E. It might be possible. Let's see. Just gonna put in the map that I was using. The HDRI. Can put down one of these that has a shader built in maybe. So if you go to render, pre-flight scene, this is designed for submitting stuff to render farms. So you can see you get like a full tree diagram of all of the external textures that are being used, or even scripts and stuff like that. You can see the mapping here. You can find the expression. I don't know if there's a super handy way to remap paths. This is more for like sanity check of if references are external or will work relative to the hip file. Green basically means it's a good path. Red means it might not work relative to the hip file. Thought that there were maybe more selection stuff you could do over here. The other option that you have is doing, I think with this magnifying glass. That might not be it. Thought that there was a more robust like parameter search thing. So there's the find node. Let's look at raw parameter. This might not be, you might be able to do something like that with this, but I'm not 100% sure. So that's one thing. if you are not using Houdini Indie, you can save the file as text if you have like the full Houdini version. And then you could open it with like a file editor if it's possible and just do find and replace. If that's not possible, you might need to do some Python or something like that. That might be. I don't know. You could try some of this stuff, like here, this will filter by EXR. You might be able to filter, if you look into it enough, you might be able to do it with the magnifying glass tools. But yeah, usually I've just done bigger pipelines and tool sets and stuff like that. There are Python scripts that people have written that will basically allow you to parse through all the parameters. I don't remember so like this parms will give you a dictionary of like all the parms. There's ways to do it if you really want to get messy with the Python stuff or whatever, but it might be too much for right now. If you're already experienced with Python, it could be somewhat straightforward, but if you're not too used to it, I don't know, I wouldn't necessarily recommend like jumping through that. You kind of going down like a rabbit hole or whatever. But yeah, it's looking pretty good. Might have gotten a little too funny with these colors. Yeah, that might be it for today. If you are interested in extending some of this stuff further, they do have some tools that are built in that are fun to try. Just cancel that where it is. So they have the one that I left connected, this ocean foam. This is meant to generate, it will run like a little simulation of particles. So you can see here it's running a solver. And it is possible to bake out like a texture map to get some foam out of this stuff. It looks like it's already like cropping it to the camera frustum. So what this does is it finds the peaks of the waves based off of this cusp, and it will just emit from the crests, from like the white caps. So you can try different values there. You can go down to a lower resolution. You kind of get an idea of what's happening here. They're basically just going to create points, fade them out over time. It is possible to bake textures using this. Another option you have is in this Bake Maps network. There's another node here that's generating a cusp map. That's a black and white map. So this one you can actually use in your shader. Could go ahead and do that. It's a pretty quick thing to do. So we were getting the displacement, but we can also just pull in this cusp. And there's different ways you could use this. You might just pump it into diffuse weight. This is the idea with this is that the top of the waves are kind of rougher or less reflective. I got the wrong window. Let me see if it's working. Might not have gotten the correct path. Gen cusp. Might be that it's just not a super good maybe because it's just doing the alpha channel. I think that their idea is that they're merging, they're doing some funny stuff to do like an RGBA image or whatever. You would maybe have to build this out a little bit, but you could save this out if you wanted to. It's going to be it for today. Got carried away. So yeah, that's another thing you can play with in this method. You can also make your own kind of like ocean foam setups and stuff like that. If you use the whitewater, this is actually based off of the whitewater tools to do the foam simulation. If you want to be adventurous, you can make your own. So like, it was something I did even before they had as robust of tools. Basically doing similar ideas. I did some like weird gravity stuff that's looking a little bit weird, but you can see the idea is that like you accumulate patches of foam over time. So one way to do it. The last thing you can do 7 years ago, this is super old school. If you just find like some foam photographs or making your own textures, it's possible to even just use these in your shader. I don't know if there's any that I'm finding that are super good. Some people have made them on Substance, like nice tileable ones or things like that. But sometimes just grabbing these and using them as like a starting point or whatever can be somewhat successful. I don't think these ones are clean enough to get going, but you could also make some using noise or stuff like that. This one's pretty cool. All right, this is going to be the last one. Last thing today. So we'll just use the max on noise and let's get rid of the surface. We'll visualize it. I don't know if I still have the window open. If there was a good page from Maxon. Here it is. If you just want to get quick thumbnails of all the noises, you might be able to find something. This thing's kind of stringy. It's a little too crisp, but kind of gets close to something. Luca could be it. Maybe the Naki. Let's give the Naki a try. So right now this is using the object space noise, but I think we actually want to do this using the texture, like coordinates. And then you just do change range. We're going to want to scoop out like the darker values and make them white. You start to get something. It's not super good, but if you're just doing a quick ocean or something like that, it could be usable. Let's maybe try that, and then just do a exponent. Kind of like turbulence or something. So instead of the cusp texture, we can just chuck this in. I might need to rebuild the scene. So I think we also need to I think because I ended up doing that translucency stuff, it was overriding it. So if you do change range again, this one will flip it around. So we're doing the inverse of it. And this can be our refraction weight. And then we should be able to see both of them. See it a little bit. Back then I didn't understand a thing. Yeah, I think the original one, there was the Scott Keating river. It was like Houdini 12, maybe. That was one that I learned when I was really getting into VOPs, and I found it really useful. Looks like he's made some new ones since then. I'm sure a lot of it changed. But that one was really useful, especially he was going into how to work with SDFs and basically building your own like advection system and stuff like that, and it was really cool. It was a bunch of ops stuff. I think this one is it, maybe. Yeah, this, I think this is it. I think maybe it was like part 2. I don't know. Somewhere in this 9 years ago, somewhere around this time, there's some interesting ones. But yeah, a bunch of the people were building their own because they didn't have their shelf tool method for a while. All right, so I'm just going to try to play around with this stuff a little bit more. Maybe I didn't want to do as much. Exponent. But you get the ideas, kind of. Something a little bit foamy or white watery. This texture isn't super, the noise isn't super great, but you can get some variation at least in turbulence or whatever's could be useful. Even if it is just like a little subtle, it can help break stuff up a little bit, I guess. But ideally you want some custom stuff that's maybe giving you some trails and stuff like that. How do you use substances in Redshift? I'm not sure. I haven't used the plugin or anything. I haven't even used Substance recently. What I was doing earlier was just baking the maps from Substance and then connecting them using these texture sampler nodes. But there are some plugins and stuff like that that people have made that should do a little bit better of a job. Like just you don't have as much stuff that you need to manage. But I'm generally a big fan of just using the Maxon noise or whatever noises your renderer gives you. Baking is okay. So yeah, just in the Substance player, or the Substance viewer or whatever, go fully 110% Houdini procedural. I mean, procedural is nice, like, because these aren't super great textures, but you can get a lot of detail and you don't need to worry about like running out of resolution or managing as much stuff, but it takes a lot of practice to like I need to spend a lot more time to actually get this looking somewhat all right. So yeah, it's just up to you. The Substance can be pretty good because it is so fast to like preview the actual results with lighting and stuff like that if you're making bumps and normal maps and stuff like that. But like Redshift or working procedurally, it gets a little bit slower to actually build the full scene and preview it or whatever. All right, we are wrapping up for realsies this time. So yeah, I'll do one more higher resolution render. Do this. It's going to be like an 8K texture map. See what the results look like. Do one more pump of the file share if you guys want to look at the noise stuff or whatever. And then I'll be logging off. So these 8K textures take a bit of time to generate, but if you're making like a still or you really want a quality image, if you have a really high resolution thing or something, sometimes that extra detail pays off. You just get some crisp detail or whatever. It's pretty cool. The beach party. All right. So here's the latest. That will be it for today. So I hope everyone enjoys their weekend if they have any of it left. The start of their holidays or wherever you are in your holiday season. I'll be back on Wednesday, which will be the 23rd. Yeah. All right, logging off. I'll see you guys in a few days. All right, take it easy.